Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Landscapers Grow Together, a video series, interview series. Today, I've got Grant Smith with me on the series. Very pleased to be joined by him today. He's the owner of Aqua-Link Pools and Spas down in Southern California, and he's also the co-host of the Ask the Masters podcast for pool builders. And we interviewed Grant's other co-host, Dave, in a previous interview. So I'll link to that one below. So this should be a really interesting chat. So yeah, thanks, Grant, for joining us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very welcome. So I normally just start these by asking, what's the story behind your business and kind of just give me a little background as to your career and your business and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, back in 1994, I was just getting out of the United States Marine Corps after serving 5 years doing that, and I needed something to do because they always teach you a lot of skills when you do that kind of work. So at least life skills that you can take out in the civilian world. So originally, I was going to become a local deputy sheriff. But the county at the time, which is Orange County, which is actually where we do a lot of our work now, they had a financial issue, so they put a hiring freeze on. And at the time, I had a relative that was in the pool business, and so he said, "Hey, I need a guy to help me, do what we call startups, which are we started the pool and get it going and chemicalize it, and then we end up taking the service over on the pool." And then we started, building a pool route, which you go to weekly service. So you take care of the pool once a week. And so I started building a pool route, and I got that up to about 80 pools a week. And then I ended up getting bored with that after 3 years because you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And I ended up selling that business. And then I got more in the renovation market of swimming pools. And then after a time, I got into the actual new construction of swimming pools. And then I realized that, unfortunately, a lot of landscape contractors, at least where I'm at, don't really know how to work around swimming pools. And so I ended up going out and getting in California, you have a lot of licensing requirements. And so I went ahead and got my landscape license, and then I've been doing pool and landscape projects. We pretty much do them turnkey. We do pools only, but those are only in certain situations. I don't like a lot of people working around our pools that don't know what they're doing, so I have a tendency to try to do the entire project. So we do full-on, swing water vessels, whether they're fountains or swimming pools. We also do the hardscape and also the softscape, or we would call the landscape. So we do plants and irrigation, landscape lighting, any kind of concrete work, pavers, anything that runs the gamut. We're more of a boutique builder. We probably do 10 to 11 projects a year. Most of our stuff is a little bit more on the higher end side, just because we kind of gravitate towards, that kind of client.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, you're probably one of the few people that I've spoken to who kind of does everything. So
right, yeah.
The hardscaping, softscaping, and the pools. But I'm sure it makes for a very kind of unified backyard, for your clients. So it sounds like a nice way to do things.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it does.
And it sounds like you kind of moved from, you did the maintenance side and then moving into the construction side.
Right.
How was that sort of transition?
Well, it's a lot of pool contractors, at least in the United States, do move from the maintenance side to the construction side. So it is one of those things where, luckily I had a bit of a mentor and a family member that was in the business. So I was kind of going off of what he was doing and learned from him. But then you realize once you get into the construction side, it's a lot more, pool guys always, it's kind of funny, pool guys always make fun, pool maintenance guys always make fun of the builders. But I don't think they realize a lot of times, what the builders have to put up with, as between the client and the, and actually how to build the project. So I was like most pool contractors, we subcontracted a lot of things out, most of the things out. And then and then you complete the pool. But then I started realizing that, there's just a different way to do pools. And we actually started getting more educated about how to build pools. Through our, where Dave and I have been through the same program from Fluid Dynamics. And so we ended up going through school, basically, university basically for pools. And we actually learned how to build a pool the way it should be built. So there's a lot to building pools. A lot of people don't realize that. I joke sometimes with my customers, we'll put in more concrete, more steel, more plumbing and electrical than most people have in their houses. So people don't really realize the complexity sometimes that it takes to build swimming pools and how much really of a liability it is too, because we are talking about something that, could potentially, it's drowning hazards. diving hazards, electrical hazards, working with water. So it's a lot of responsibility versus just a service where you're just going out to clean a pool.
Yeah, for sure. In your area, so in Orange County, Southern California, is it quite regulated in terms of who can be a pool builder?
Right.
So with that education piece, how does that work?
Well, in state of California, which is probably the most restrictive out of all the states, there's some states like Texas that don't have any. I mean, you don't even need a license. Anybody can build a pool there. So in California, you do have to go through a little bit of a vetting process where you have to have somebody certified that you've been building pools for 4 years, or your knowledge about. They don't require like an educational component to it, which is, I think we need to start going towards that area, because as anything in life, you get a lot of people that get signed off on their 4 years of experience by friends, or somebody that just so we have a lot of builders out here that, even though they're licensed, they don't truly know how to build a pool. So they know the basics, they know how to build it, but they rely a lot on their subcontractors, and we do need more education. So that's what we're trying to push for in the industry. That's one of the reasons why we started our own podcast, was Ask the Masters, is to basically educate other builders and how to do things properly, and answer the questions that they run up against something that's really unique.
Yeah. I mean, what's your perspective on kind of continuing education as a business owner? I mean, it's something that I think many people find super important, but maybe can get left by the wayside, I think, because it seems like it's not a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing. A lot of people, they go to college, they actually get trained in their field, whether they're an engineer, or they're, a scientist, or, business person, things like that. In the pool industry, especially, there is our, Genesis group that actually educates people. But there's no like college or anything anybody can go learn how to do a pool. And I think a lot of people just think, well, there's nothing out there, or it's too expensive to go. But it's very valuable, I think. When in my younger days, when I was in my early 20s, I decided not to go to college because I'd already been out, I got out of the Marines when I was 23. So I was like, it's kind of too late to go to college now. I didn't really value education then. But as I got older, I realized, yes, continuous education and education period is just a good idea. I still learn new stuff every day. I still go to classes every year. I still read articles. I try to, get on the internet and, find out, different techniques. And, we try to expand outside of the industry in other construction fields, because a lot of the same things that go on in other construction fields actually apply to the pool industry too. So education, I think, in continuous education, I think, is the key.
That makes sense. So do you find, I mean, so aside from Genesis, which has a bit more of a formal educational component, I think, do you find there's good info out on YouTube? Obviously, you've got your podcast, things like that. Is there much of that available?
Not particularly. I think the internet, unfortunately, it shows way too much more bad than good. YouTube for our industry is, you have a lot of people that are out there showing how to do something because they think it's the right way to do it. 90% of what you see on YouTube, in our industry, is the wrong way to do it. It's not the proper way to do it. So I think, in some sense, YouTube and other videos that people put up, because it's not regulated. I mean, anybody could put a video up on YouTube and they say, okay, this is the right way to do it. No, it's the wrong way to do it. You're doing it wrong. So we do have guidelines in certain codes. Like, we have the American Concrete Institute, the American Shotcrete Association. We follow the International Building Code on a lot of things. So you have to go back and refer to those codes. And those codes will actually tell you the right way to do it. And unfortunately, with YouTube, it's like, it's an open, nobody should pay attention to YouTube, so
apart from this,
I'm sure there's one or two. Well, as far as getting construction advice or how to do,
for sure.
I mean, I'm sure there are videos out there and people that really take it seriously, but I would say 90% of the content is just bad.
I think that's something listeners will find super useful, is like, make sure that you're going to the right sources, for your education and your information. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you kind of transferred out of maintenance, started in the construction, and now you're doing these amazing high-end projects. They look amazing, on your website, etc. What are your tips for kind of building your reputation, building your brand so that people will come to you for those jobs?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is basically doing what you say. Especially with high-end clients, we kind of have a thing of, strive for perfection, strive to get better, aim for perfection. That's kind of like one of our taglines. And although, every day, we're not perfect every day, no human being is. But that's one thing, and to work your way up into the higher end market, I find, is respond to people, answer their phone calls, return their texts, return their emails. Don't take 6, 7 days, to return their emails. When you're dealing with a higher end client, they expect like a concierge kind of service. So, they're not going to wait, if you don't call them back for 5 days, they're done with you. They don't have time to waste. Another thing too is the one reason why we say aim for perfection is because hiring clients want to have that everything they see to be perfect. So they're paying a lot of money for this product. They're paying, they want to see something that's beautiful, something that is going to work well and function well, and they're not going to put up with excuses. So that's another. You can't just be your average person where you go out there and say, I'm just going to do, my normal job like everybody else does, and then expect a different result. So these people are expecting you to be better. You got to make sure you look professional. Clean up your job sites every day. Just communicate with people, and you have to be. They're expecting the best, so you have to kind of put yourself out there. And once you kind of get into that, and be knowledgeable, that kind of goes back to the educational piece. Is people that have money, they're smart, or they wouldn't have money. Sure, there's a few trust fund babies out there, or people that inherited wealth that are probably dumber than a rock. But most people that have money have success because they made themselves. So they're not dumb. So you have to be knowledgeable about everything that you're doing for them. You just can't say, oh, I'll get back to you later, or oh, my sales guy will handle that, or or you have to know that you have to be knowledgeable because they'll pick up on that right away. So that's another thing. That's why the continuing education is really, a lot of people nowadays, especially, they're into wellness and they want, we call them the granola crowd out here in California. So they're into wellness, which I know in Europe, swimming pools are more for wellness than they are in the United States. We view it as a fun thing or a piece of artwork in the backyard. But so, a lot of people nowadays are getting more trending into wellness. And so they really want to know about all the new stuff out there as far as like ozone and AOP and, all the latest, greatest technology. So that's another thing too. They're really, especially the kids that are coming out nowadays, the millennials, they're really into technology. So you really got to be up on your game. You just can't say, oh, I'm going to put a time clock on this pool and leave you. Turn this valve, turn that valve, and we're done. Especially high-end clients, they want to be able to control that pool from wherever they are in the world. So it's just a lot of, you got to really be knowledgeable about stuff. And like I said, do what you say. And once you get that first pool or that first landscape project where you do what you said you're going to do and your work looks terrific, that'll start snowballing, because they're going to tell their friends or their circle. And so it's just it can take a while. Definitely it's something that's not going to happen overnight. So I think a lot of people get discouraged, but it can take a good few years to work your way into that market.
And that's where the perseverance, determination really comes in.
Right.
It's a long game, isn't it? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of really, really good stuff in there. So yeah, appreciate that. What's one of the biggest struggles you would say that you had just in growing the business in general? And was there something that you did to overcome?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just, for me, people, unfortunately, employees, we got a great set of employees. We have 10 employees right now. Some of them have been with me for years. My head guy's been with me for 11 years now. They're all great employees, but always labor force is a problem. And although we have 10, we've been through an additional 5 just in the last year and a half, just because,
Right.
they're not working out, or there's, labor is always a problem, especially in the United States right now where unemployment's like really low. So, it's really hard to find, good labor and skilled labor. And I say labor, not some guy pushing a wheelbarrow. We need skilled people to work. So anybody, we just can't pull the guy off of, the street and, do what we do. We try to get young kids in to kind of mentor them and actually get them through like an apprentice program, which is, at least in the United States, has gone by the wayside, unfortunately. We don't have those kind of apprentice programs, that we used to back in the 70s and the 60s and the 80s. Unfortunately, we've been pushing our kids more towards college instead of picking up a trade. And so we're really short on the trade skills. Another thing, too, is just dealing with people in general. I kind of, coming from a military background, when I say, okay, I'll meet you at 8 o'clock, that means 15 minutes to 8 o'clock. Not 15. And most guys will show up 10 minutes after 8 o'clock. So having, my biggest problem I have is people doing what they say they're going to do. And so it's always a constant following up with phone calls and emails and say, I'll meet you here, or I expect you to be, I expect you to be here, or, what's your commitment? You have to be committed to do these jobs, especially high-end work, because homeowners don't want to hear you say, well, yeah, my plumber didn't show up today or something because, his truck broke down, quote unquote. That's, a big excuse.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the biggest challenges is just people doing what they're being reliable, not being flaky. So that's always a big challenge, especially in our field. So
professionalism.
Professionalism, exactly, professionalism.
Yeah.
I mean, California, unfortunately, we are highly regulated. So I would say another stumbling block for us, at least here, is the government. They're just, they're just on you all the time. You've got to watch everything you do, and taxes are always a big issue too. Insurance costs here in the state also. So if they could kind of loosen up some of that regulation, it would help out. Not that we would do anything bad or not do what we're supposed to do, but it's just, it's basically suffocating, sometimes. So those are probably the two biggest things, is like flaky people, employees, and, the government.
Yeah, that's all super, super useful stuff. Loads of good pieces of advice. Is there one more thing that you would say to someone that was, maybe starting out in their career a few years in and wanting to grow and wanting to scale? What would a piece of advice additional to what we've already said?
Right. Yeah. I mean, scaling, it's hard to scale sometimes, especially in construction, because now, if you're doing maintenance, landscape maintenance, or pool, service maintenance, you do have some scaling problems, because the biggest thing that runs into, when you're doing pool service maintenance or landscape maintenance is, once again, labor, having dependable people. And that's like the key to it. If you can find dependable people that you can count on, hold on to those people, because that's really going to be the only way you're going to scale up. Otherwise, because I try to do that in the pool service part, where I try to scale up a little bit and get beyond 80 a week. My thought at the time was to try to get 400 to 500 pools a week, route going. I'd have, like 10 employees and the whole thing, but I couldn't even find 2 that were even reliable enough to even handle the ones that they had. So really, that's going to be the hardest thing in scaling up. Not that you can't do it, and you just have to be determined to do it, and you have to. Like anything in business, if you own your own business, it's a 7-day a week, almost like 24-hour, a day kind of job. So if you can find the right labor, people, and even if it's just reaching out to friends or, relatives that need work or, could use a job, they're always usually reliable. But that's the biggest thing in scaling up is just, the labor part of the labor aspect of it. So on the construction side, for me, scaling up to be a mass pool builder is not something I'm even interested in, or even because once you get past a certain point with construction, especially, is you lose that control of the job site. And for us, the biggest problems I see in the pool industry and the landscape industry is they're too busy, they're not paying attention to the jobs, and then they end up in trouble. So, out in California, we have a lot of attorneys that specialize in construction defect, cases, and they make entire law firms that's all they do all day long. And most of the cases that I see, because I will do construction remediation stuff for projects, is because the guys just weren't there on the job site. They're not paying attention. It's like all the materials, all the labor was there. It's just that 10% of lack of supervision. So to scale up on a construction scale, if you want to be a mass builder, that's fine, but just expect you have to put in your business plan that you're going to have to pay out a certain amount of money for things that you've got to go back and fix. or that you may have, some legal problems with. When you're a smaller, builder like I am, where you're doing more high-end work, that's why you've got to be there and just, because some of our clients could actually just put us away, even with our insurance, they can actually just put us out of business. So you have to be careful, that you do with a higher-end client.
Yeah.
Because they have the capacity to basically put you out of business. So if you want to mass scale that, you have to kind of figure that into your costs of, okay, well, I'm going to have a certain percentage of these pools that are going to fail, and so I have to be prepared for that, to pay out on those.
That's super interesting, and I think the key is, certain things are really difficult, but if you plan it out and you have the determination and you're willing to carry through those those obstacles, then there's no reason that you can't do it. But it's definitely things to be aware of, and I think people will find this super interesting, to hear those specific things that you've pointed out, and to watch out for them. So
Yeah, just keep your word. I mean, that's the big thing. Just keep your word to people. It's just going to automatically grow your business. You would be surprised at how many times I've been out and talked to a client, and they're like, "Oh, well, you showed up on time, or you showed up 10 minutes early," going back to the 15 minutes early, or that you gave me a call back, or Southern California especially is known, the traffic is terrible, especially up in LA. And even if I leave 2 hours ahead of time, who knows, because there's some wreck on the freeway or something, I'll call people and say, look, my GPS now says I'm going to be 15 minutes late. And that's what they appreciate. So just being communicative with people, and then just doing what you say. And that's going to be, even if you're just not doing that's just not for high-end projects or people, that's for everybody. If you did that with every client that you're trying to sell a job to, I mean, they'll just love you for that, and they'll just refer you and keep referring you. That's another good way to grow your business.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, there's so much useful stuff in this. I really appreciate it. So the attention to detail, perseverance, professionalism, and all the rest. Yeah, I think that's all super good stuff that people will find really useful. Well, I think we're pretty much coming up on our time, but it was great. Thank you so much, Grant, and I'll drop links to Ask the Masters and to your company website so that people can go and check you out. Thanks for coming on.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.